Hi, I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Esme Wang. I am the author of two books, the New York Times bestselling The Collective Schizophrenias and the award-winning The Border of Paradise. I write both fiction and nonfiction, and I currently am working on a third book, which should be coming out in the not too distant future. So I'm here to talk about something a little bit different from what the other people may be talking about regarding publishing. So publishing is very complicated. I'm so glad that the Sparkle Summit is addressing this issue. But how do you get published without having any writing? And so that's what I'm going to be addressing today is building a writing practice while living with limitations. I'm going to be talking about living with limitations versus the typical recommendations and rules for building a writing practice, a lot of which makes me very frustrated. So here, let's start with a slideshow. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And we're looking at building a writing practice while living with limitations, a live webinar. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. So to begin, I'd like to cover living with limitations, whatever that means for you, versus the typical recommendations and quote unquote rules for building a writing practice. And I want to say that many of these rules make really ableist assumptions about our bodies and minds and what they're capable of, as well as classist and sexist assumptions about caretaking responsibilities. There is a book that many of you may love. It is Stephen King's On Writing. And I gotta say, that book really, truly angers me because Stephen King says something to the equivalent of if you do not write every single day, you are not a writer. And that is just, I think that's BS, to put it politely. But we do need to write in order to be writers. So, how do we build a writing practice when we live with limitations, such as chronic illness or disability? So the first thing that I would recommend is that you assess your situation. So here is the productivity equation. I'm going to give you that. That's going to be the basis for everything that we talk about moving forward. For those of you who have or are going through a class I have called Dream Hunting with Limitations, some of this will sound a bit familiar. So ask yourself and make notes for each. I hope you have a notebook with you. Number one, what are your limitations? Number two, how do they impact your life? And number three, how are you currently spending your time? So, in order to do this part, the assess your situation part, I recommend using a worksheet that measures time by half hour and filling it out depending on what you're doing at any given time. I'd recommend some planners later that you might find helpful, but there are worksheets that are a good place to start. I would recommend looking at Passion Planner. They have a free worksheet that has this very thing I'm describing, just like every half hour. And so, what you can see from answering these questions and filling these things out, we'll come back to that later. The next thing that I want to ask you is what are your writing goals? So, there are writing goals that you have control over. These are what I want you to think about, i.e., not win the Nobel Prize in literature. Like that is a great goal. I personally would love to achieve that goal, but you don't really have that much control over it. So I would say to put a writing goal like I'm going to write 10 pages per month. And next to each goal, I'd also like you to write down the desired objective, which is a concept that I learned from Fizzle.co. The desired objective is to remind you of what you're actually trying to get by reaching this goal. So for writing 10 pages a month, the desired objective might be I would like to have a memoir written in the next 3 years. So, in terms of reaching your writing goals, there are quite a few steps that this will include. What are the components of what it takes to reach your writing goals? So, there's research, dreaming, administrative tasks such as email. Yes, that does include writing to your editor and writing to querying agents and writing to any place that might take your pitch. Drafting and writing, of course, that's very important, and education. You are in you are taking part in education right now by doing the Sparkle Summit, and I have something called the Unexpected Shape Writing Academy, which is an online writing school for people who want to write personal nonfiction. That includes essays, memoirs, Substack posts, and whatever else you may fancy. So I recommend that when you're thinking about reaching your writing goals, you want to think about your resources. What resources do you have? What is your resource inventory? So this will vary depending on what your limitations are, but you'll already have some resources and you might be able to access more resources. For example, what are your resources for chronic illness and disability? For mental illness? And so for your resource inventory, I'd recommend that you create a list of resources and then you can place them in the appropriate categories. So, do you have someone who can babysit for you? Do you have a small budget for food that can be delivered? Maybe you can barter. Maybe you can take care of someone's kids for a bit and then they'll take care of your kids for a bit and you'll be able to write during that time. So, you can keep adding to your resource inventory forever. You're always going to be having new resources. Some of your resources may leave, some of your resources may diminish, but I think it takes a lot of creativity and smarts to come up with what resources do I actually have. And so now I want to review the productivity equation, considering your limitations, assessing your resources, and looking at things you need to get done to reach your goals and build a writing practice. So, I want to use some strategies to reevaluate your 24 hours. Okay, so you've probably heard the saying, we all have the same 24 hours as Beyonce, which is not true. We do not all have the same 24 hours as Beyonce. Beyonce has a lot of help that 99.999% of us do not have. And so I want to share these strategies for reevaluating the time that you do have. So you don't always need to increase your hours of work to be more productive. You just need to stick to a day to day writing practice, brick by brick, and it doesn't have to be every day either. Number two, consider leveraging the hours you do have to make them more productive using a variety of strategies. So, if your resource is relationships, barter with them for help. If your resource is money, hire an expert for help, maybe for cleaning your house once a week. If your resource is community, see what communities online and off can offer support and advice. Again, going back to your resource inventory. You can decrease the number of hours your challenges take up. Is there any way to make this wedge of the pie smaller? Your challenges may be just overwhelming exhaustion, which is something that I experience every day. Is there any way to make this wedge of the pie chart smaller? Well, I could investigate medications or supplements. I could dedicate a bit of time to resting very intentionally and then focus on writing. Number four, by looking at these things, you can see the spaces in your hour by hour weekly planner that might be good places to create a writing practice. However, I know this, one of the most difficult things about living with limitations while trying to get things done is how unpredictable our bodies and minds can be. This is just a fact, and any of you who are living with chronic illness or disability know what I'm talking about. So I like to use my planner, which is right now a Jibon Teko, which is made by Kukuyo, a Japanese company, to write down what I'm able to do while I'm doing it. So writing these things down helps to give me data points that I can use for the future, especially because my body and mind are always changing. I'm not the same person that I was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago. So I've learned that I can usually do about two events in a day. Recording this class for the Sparkle Summit is one of those events for today. So I'll only have enough energy to do one more event. That could be making dinner with my husband. That could be having a phone call with someone. That could be writing a pitch for a piece for Bon Appetit. I've learned that two things a day is generally all I can do. So I've also learned that I need an hour or at least a half an hour of buffer time where I can lie down and rest between events. So if I'm scheduling things, it's not a good idea for me to schedule things just like back to back to back. I write down the time of day at which I take my medications because I might need to adjust those times in order to be able to do a nighttime reading or wake up earlier the next day. I also use a color coding system in my monthly spread to know what days are especially tough and which days are especially strong. I use a pink highlighter to make a dot for days where I was especially strong, and a green highlighter for days where I was especially ill or days that were especially tough. There isn't always a pattern to these things, but when there are, such as feeling like very fatigued right around the start of my period, it's good to note what they are. So, what are some methods that you've used to work with unpredictability in your lives? As far as I can see, at times like this, you have two options. Option one, you can keep pushing to try and fix your day. As you try harder and harder, relax, body, come on. You watch your work piling up. And option two, this is something I got from Grace Quentalk, who is a trailblazing advocate for people with chronic illness and disability. You can do it now. Get on with things as best you can today. Accepting the work won't be as good as you would like. So I choose option two. It's no more fun, but at least it's distracting and satisfying, and I end up with some work. Because are you waiting until you feel well enough to do what you need to do? I mean, yeah, me too. But if you have a long-term illness like I do, you can't guarantee you'll know when you'll feel well enough again. So on days like this, my option is to be grumpy about it and then rush to catch up with work later, or just to do the best that I can as I am now choosing option two. So when I choose option two, I'm aware that I'm working at a reduced capacity. I know that everything is about 11 trillion times harder like this. And I know that I'm painfully in touch with the fact that if I felt quote unquote better, I could do this properly. So there are, disadvantages. It's not a perfect system. But let's see. To clarify, I'm not talking about pushing through the pain. I'm not talking about productivity pressure and ignoring your body. I'm not talking about an acute illness or even a minor flare up where rest and care will ameliorate the systems when stopping is allowing our body to repair and heal. But by putting the pieces together, using the productivity equation, using your goals and resources, and option two, you can begin to create space for writing practice where you may have previously felt overwhelmed by your limitations. So there is no Q&A because I'm doing this by myself. But I hope you found this helpful. These are all things that I've used to create a writing practice for myself. And if you put in the time to create your own writing practice and are feeling enthusiastic about learning about nonfiction writing in particular, you may be interested in learning about the Unexpected Shape Writing Academy, which is currently open for registration. Uh, in the Academy, we've worked through the three phases of writing your nonfiction book or any nonfiction work in a simplified and structured way over a 3-month period or however long you would like to have membership in the Academy. We go through pre-writing curriculum, writing curriculum, and publication curriculum, as well as 12 guest lectures from some of the most amazing people that we have writing today: Leslie Jameson, Suleika Jawad, Hanifa Barakib, Stephanie Fu, all kinds of amazing people, Melissa Fivos. So the Academy guests, again, they're amazing. There are also editors in the guest lectures who will tell you more about the publication process. So if you answer yes to any of these questions, this might be the community for you. Am I someone who wants to write a memoir or nonfiction book based on my story, life experience, or expertise? Do I want to become a prolific public speaker and thought leader in my industry? Do I want to have a voice and represent people like me in the mainstream publishing world? So I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking part in this building a writing habit while living with limitations. Part of my big mission with the Academy and in life is helping people from marginalized communities get published. I really believe that we all deserve to have our voices heard, and I also believe that great things happen when representation in the publishing world and on our bookshelves is more diverse. So it would be my honor to have you in this adventure. It's $67 a month. And here's how you can join the Academy and stay in touch. If you want to email me with questions, I'm at info@esmewang.com. If you want to learn more about the Academy, which I highly recommend, just look at the page, see if it's right for you. It's unexpectedshape.writingacademy.com. Wait a minute, that's wrong. Unexpectedshapeacademy.com. Forget the writing part. Um, anyway, and you can DM me on Instagram and ask me any questions you might have at Esme W. Wang. I'm so glad that I got the chance to work with you all today. Thank you so much to Claire for inviting me to join the Sparkle Summit, and I hope you have a terrific rest of your day.